sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday and welcome back to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. What is going on, guys? Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Rumble. That's right. We are now live on Rumble for our first live Rumble stream. So I've already been on Rumble before uploading videos, but this is the first actual live stream. And yeah, there was more of a push to do this, I think, considering what happened with those of us over at RBN. So I want to go ahead and start out and give a big shout out here to Glenn Greenwald, and then I'll say hello to people in the chat. Shout out to Glenn Greenwald for being a real one. For those of you who are not aware, RBN, we cannot stream or upload on RBN until possibly Thursday. We have a strike over there. They got us in reference to pandemic information. Of course, you know how they are about that information. It's ridiculous. But that is why you have not seen us streaming on the RBN platform the past couple of days. In fact, Nick and CJ have been streaming on the Long Beach chapter of RBN YouTube channel. And Nick and CJ did the first live stream on Rumble today. So from what I heard from them, things are looking good so far. But shout out to Glenn for being a real one. He said, Google bans from YouTube for a week a leftist network of Black commentators. Some of the best and most interesting analysis around. The world's dumbest people are those liberals who insist that free speech is only a right-wing value, and it's only about letting Nazis speak. He goes on to say this is a key reason American liberals have become so supportive of censorship. Censorship for dissidents, for people with threatening ideas. Liberals are harmless. They serve establishment power. Nobody would bother censoring MSNBC host or AOC. And of course, there's thank yous there from Nick, from myself. Rome also said thank you. Indie News Network, JB. But yeah, that's what's happening over there. So shout out to Glenn for being a real one. I really do appreciate him coming out to support us. Many have not, and including some that we consider to be comrades. Is really interesting. I do feel like every time people have been censored on this platform, either myself or RBN has come out to defend that type of censorship. But it's interesting that this time around it happens to us and a lot of people are silent. So yes, I'm calling that out. Anywho, thank you, Glenn. Welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and give shout outs to people in the chat and then we'll dive into tonight's stories. There's a lot of comments, a lot of them. Shout out to Duly Noted says, don't got Twitter. That's okay. You'll find out what was said tonight on the show. I usually show the poll at the end of the stream. Anywho, Dabby Dab says, I also don't have Twitter. I'll hold my vote until I hear what the tweet was. Brace yourself for this one. Shout out to Marnock says, the answer is no. I see Marnock probably does have Twitter. Shout out to Lawrence Johnson, who's a Sabby member, says, it was stupid to delete the tweet. Even though deleted, you cannot undo its having posted in the first place. Shout out to Will. No, he should not have. If RFK is going to say something and take such a firm stance on it, then he needs to leave the tweet where it is. Deleting it is cowardice and makes him look untrustworthy. Shout out to Joe. OWS says censorship in any form is wrong. I have absolutely nothing in common with any neoliberal or QAnon Republican, but I will dig my heels in the earth and fight to the death to protect freedom of speech. Shout out to Pitchforks Are Coming, who's a Sabby member, says Kennedy deleting his tweet shows his true colors and proves he's just another shitty, greedy capitalist. His grift will make him even more wealthy and guarantee Biden another term. What's going on? Emoji says, I get the feeling RFK Jr. is more left-leaning than he's letting on. He has no problem pissing off the establishment. So I'm not sure what the reason for his mealy-mouthness is with Palestine. We'll get into that. Greetings, Miguel says, peace. What's going on? ACAB says, hello, everyone. Shout out to Mika, says hello to Lawrence and that he likes Richard Medhurst. I shouldn't assume he or she likes Richie Medhurst. Shout out to Hannah G, says Roger in the hot seat again. Yes, he is. Unfortunately, this is where we're at now. Shout out to Mr. E-Man, says hello, Sabinators, Sabsters, and Sabs. Greetings, Ilhanner, says hello to Miguel. Shout out to She's Black, says RFK is a Zionist and I don't see how anybody support him. Greetings, Dr. Nick, says hi, everybody. Shout out to Butterfan, says alert. Greetings, Mastermind Hour, says hello, fam. Shout out to Steve, says hello, everybody. Hello, Steve. Greetings, Jacoby, says good afternoon from Portland, Oregon. What's up? I heard Portland has some yummy voodoo donuts. Shout out to Anthony, sends a smile. Greetings to Cool Blue, says good evening, everyone. Greetings, Bad Cookie, says evening all. Shout out to Corey, who's a Sabby member, says hey all. What's going on? Yepex says JB is in his Marxism crash course class, ATM. Greetings, Robin says happy Tuesday. Let's do this. And shout out to Notori, says hi, Sab, sending flowers and love. Okay, we do have a lot to discuss tonight. For that very reason, I'm actually not doing call in tonight. We'll resume it on Thursday. I'm going to be on Rising tomorrow morning. And then I also have another car appointment. Don't get me started. Yes, another car appointment. So I have to take my car back to the shop again for them to fix the same problem that they were supposed to fix last time. But we don't want to get into that conversation. You'll get boggled down. Want to give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. You know what you do. You keep things rolling around here. So let's go ahead and shout these guys out. You get up to the top here. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. Thank you all for your support. You can see all of their names here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Denise Marjorie Sesher. What a beautiful name. And let's give a shout out to M.N. Mendes. Thank you guys so much. You really do keep the lights on all around me. All of the lights around me. Okay. Let's just go ahead and get the cat out the bag. Yes, the Celtics lost last night. We got our butts kicked. I'm still sporting the green. I think they need to make some changes for next year's lineup. And I don't know why, but for some weird reason, everyone decided to shoot threes last night that they could not make. I don't know what that trend is about, but it was very obvious to me. Dude, you cannot rely on these threes. I don't know if you're afraid to go to the hole and get to the basket and beat these dudes. What happened to people dunking? What happened to people nailing those layups? They were missing so many shots. It was frustrating for me to watch. And I had to sit back and say, they don't want to win this. They don't want to win this tonight. But yes, we lost. We got our butts kicked, and I admit it. But I'm still wearing the green, damn it. All right, let's go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail, and we'll get started with our stories tonight. So tonight, we are discussing Roger Waters ditched by RFK Jr. Ouch. Yikes. That was a doozy. Was not expecting that one. We are going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Joe Biden caves to Kevin McCarthy. Yes, it has happened. We're going to talk about that debt ceiling bill and what is in the results of that, or debt ceiling deal. Excuse me. Can't talk tonight. We're also going to discuss Marianne Williamson. Spoiler. We're going to get into that interview that she had with Mehdi Hassan and all his craziness. And we're also going to discuss Iowa building collapse. This is huge. I've been complaining about the infrastructure in this country oftentimes on this stream. This is just, unfortunately, another sad example. And we'll also get into Ohio ballot initiative wins. So let's get started. I want to start with this story here about the building collapse in Iowa. Now, this isn't the first time we've heard about this, of a building collapsing in the United States recently. It was just a couple months ago. There was a building that collapsed in Florida. And now we have this issue happening in Iowa. This is not a problem that is, linked just to one state or city in particular. Our infrastructure in this country is failing, and people need to talk about it more. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here.
Apartment collapse in Iowa. Officials say there are no reported deaths. One person is recovering after being rescued when part of that 6-story building came crashing down yesterday. 7 others were also rescued soon after the building came down. Alex Perez is in Davenport, Iowa, with the latest.
Building's partially collapsing.
Urgent search and rescue efforts underway after a 6-story apartment building with as many as 80 units partially collapsed in Davenport, Iowa.
Could you imagine residing you're just chilling in your apartment, and then all of a sudden half of the building just collapses?
See, we had a tragic event today.
Officials saying there are a number of people unaccounted for, but have not said how many.
The building just collapsed.
The rear part of the downtown apartment tower, which was undergoing repairs after complaints from residents, suddenly caving in.
I'm hoping and praying that the screams that I heard when the building came down was not people inside of it.
Officials say the first calls for help came shortly before 5 p.m.
Our crews arrived on scene and found a 6-story apartment complex with a portion of the rear building had actually collapsed. Crews also found a large natural gas leak and water leaking from all floors of the structure.
Fire crews rescuing people from the area of the initial collapse and escorting more than a dozen more from the remaining building.
I'm hoping they bring my dog out. She's all I got.
Officials say the cause of the collapse is under investigation, but questions are mounting after reports of bricks falling from the building during repairs earlier this week.
And Alex Perez joins me now from Davenport, Iowa, for more on this. Alex, Davenport officials held a press briefing this morning. What's the latest?
Yeah, Alexis, we got that update from authorities just a short time ago, and there are 2 big headlines from that update. The first one being that authorities say they have no deaths to report at this time. And the second one being that right now they have no credible reports of people missing. Of course, those are 2 very important updates here, Alexis. No short of a miracle if you look at that debris and that damage behind me here after the collapse, that no one was killed, it appears, at this point here, Alexis. But authorities say this is going to go very soon from a search and rescue effort to a search and recovery effort. They still believe this structure behind me here is very dangerous and unstable, Alexa.
Now, notice he said this is going to go to a search and recovery effort. This is important because when you hear from the tenants and the other residents that live in this neighborhood, they're going to tell a different story than what you're hearing this reporter say on CNN. It appears that the residents have been complaining about the structure of the building for quite some time, not just issues that they've had inside their apartments, but the physical structure of the building. Now, this goes back to a time when it was actually just last year when I interviewed residents at Grant Manor who have been doing the same thing here in Boston. They've been complaining about the structure of the building, issues with the roof, issues with the walls, issues with the flooring, holes in the building, and their concerns are just brushed away. It's just like, you're poor, This is what the city has to offer you. You take it or you leave it. And a big part of the issue is, especially with these particular communities, they're not really trying to fix these buildings and improve them to the way that they should be, because what they really want to do is they want the people to just leave, and then they'll sell that building to an investor, and then the investor will fix up the building. And next thing you know, you have another luxury apartment building, which all the rich people can play in. This is an ongoing issue that's been happening across this country. People who are living in poverty, that are living in these buildings, that are falling apart, that are not structurally sound. And the landlords and the companies that own these buildings don't want to put in the money to give it the proper repairs it needs. Oftentimes they'll cover up the holes, so to speak, right? You say there's a hole in the ceiling, they'll put something up there to block the hole instead of fixing the actual ceiling. They do shortcuts in reference to maintenance because they don't want to invest in the building for those people. They don't want to invest in poor people. They don't want to invest in working class people. They only want to invest in people that have money. This would not happen in a rich neighborhood. That's what people have to understand. Let's go on, and then we'll go to another clip.
Nothing short of a miracle indeed. Alex Perez in Davenport, Iowa, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George.
So that was CNN's version of events in reference to what happened. Now, there were rescue attempts. I do want to share this.
Download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
Sorry about that. Shout out to Sarah. She said more photos and video of the rescue of Lisa Brooks from the partially collapsed building here in downtown Davenport. It has been more than a day since a part of the building collapsed, and officials had abandoned rescue efforts this morning. Abandoned. Now, isn't that different from what you just heard from the reporter on CNN? This is why it's great to hear these real accounts from people who are actually there on the ground. So you can see a photo here of the fire department trying to get this individual out. This is so scary. We're going to go to a video. Let's go back here.
Thank God! Praise the Lord! Thank you, Lord.
So they were able to get that individual out, but it's really troubling to hear them say that they had actually abandoned search and rescue efforts. And then there's another picture there. Now, I want to show you what Gretchen has posted. She said, happening now, protesters have set up in front of Davenport City Hall demanding answers. This is a powerful speech I want you to hear from one of the residents.
They complained about this. And then I know my younger generation doesn't care about voting. Right? We don't care. But this should make us care about our community. They get paid to sit in those seats. And people just lost everything. We pay people to lose everything. It just had to go. Y'all want for people to do the same thing we're doing right now. So, get these people out of their offices. Absolutely. They stand behind their desk. Absolutely. Typing, wearing the city. Get out here and do their job. And stop spreading rumors.
If there was their people in there.
Now let's start this over because I want to show you what one of the signs says here. Again, just debunking what that reporter said on CNN. So this is a resident.
They complained about this.
Look at this sign here. This woman has a sign that says, find them first. Here's another sign that says, who was in the rubble? So this goes to show you that they really weren't trying to do search and rescue efforts in the way that CNN said they were trying to do. Why else would the residents, why are they standing outside protesting right now saying, are you looking for the people? Are you sure that everyone has been accounted for? And this isn't uncommon. Again, in these types of neighborhoods, in poor neighborhoods, in working class neighborhoods, do they really do their all to make sure that everyone is accounted for when an event like this happens? Now, this resident is complaining about the city officials. Where are they? Where are the city councilors? Where's the mayor? Where are all the elected officials that people vote for? Why haven't they come out? Why aren't they there with the protesters, right? So she's explaining to you, yes, I understand that people from my generation, most of us for the most time, we don't vote. She's like, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't care about what's happening in your neighborhood. And this goes back to something we say at RBN over and over again. You have to organize within your community. When it comes to what's happening in your community, you should be very well aware and you should be involved. And all of those city councilors and local political officials that hold those positions, if they are not present, then you should go to them and make sure that they are present. So that's why she said, go get them out of their seats. These people are comfortable. They only need you when they need a vote. The only time they want to come into your community is when they need you to vote. And then they disappear for the next couple of years and you don't see them again until they need you to vote for their reelection. This is a very common tale for people that live in these communities. These people are abandoned and the political officials, they're not even around. So what she's telling you is like when it comes to the political spectrum, even if you do not care about electoral politics on the national level, you need to care about what's happening with these political officials in your community that they are so invested in, as they claim.
And then I know my younger generation doesn't care about voting, right? We don't care. But this should make us care about our community.
Yep. That right there should make you care about your community. Let me tell you, you mean to tell me this building just collapsed out of nowhere? There were multiple residents who have been complaining about the structure of the building. Where were the local officials to put the pressure on the landlord and the property management company to get those things fixed? They were absent. You know why they were absent? Because it's not uncommon for some of these political officials to be in bed with other housing developers, real estate developers, other investors. A lot of times they're connected, and that's how they win some of these races, to be honest with you. So they turn their cheek and they turn their back on poor people because, again, to them, you are only important when they need your vote.
Paid to sit in those seats, and people just lost everything. We pay for people to lose everything. If this happened, y'all want for people to do the same thing we're doing right now. So, get these people out of their offices. Absolutely. They seem behind their desks. Absolutely. Typing, wearing, just saying, get out here and do their jobs. And stop spreading rumors.
If there was their people in there, they'd be out here.
That's right. That's right. Get them out of their desk. Enough is enough. You are their constituent. Now, here's another video here from Gretchen, and they're calling the city officials out by name. Where is Ryan and where is Brandon? Ryan and Brandon, where are you?
Where's Brandon? Where's Ryan? Where are they? Where's Ryan? Where's Brandon? 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 Where's Ryan?
Ryan and Brandon, where are you? Where are you? Now, I want to show you the report card from the American Civil Engineers. Now, American Society of Civil Engineers, I've talked about them on the show before. We're going to do a quick rundown about the report card that they gave to the United States infrastructure. And then I'm going to show you the report card for Iowa's infrastructure. The American Society of Civil Engineers, if you don't follow this website, you should. We are not where we should be as a country in reference to infrastructure. They gave the U.S. for the 2021 report card, they gave us a grade of a C minus. A C minus. And what you can do when you come to their website, if you scroll down to explore categories, all you have to do is hover over each category to see the grade that they gave us for each category. If I hover over bridges, they gave us a C. Aviation, we got a D plus. Dams, D. This one's a big kicker. The drinking water is a C minus. In the United States of America, our drinking water is a C minus. Energy is a C minus. Hazardous waste was a D plus. And I'm curious to see what hazardous waste would be now after East Palestine, Ohio. So you can just click on different categories to see. Public parks gets a D plus. The rail gets a B. I'm pretty sure that'll change after East Palestine, Ohio. The roads have a D. Schools, D plus. Solid waste, C plus. This is terrible. This is not a good score. And if we want to look at this, the report card for Iowa, you can actually search for your state if you're curious to see what your score is for your state. For Iowa, they gave Iowa a C. So, similar situation. If you hover over the categories for Iowa, you can see the grades. Look, bridges, they gave a D plus. D plus for the bridges. A D for the dams, a C for the drinking water, C plus for energy, D plus for inland waterways, C for levees, C for public parks, a C plus for rail, B minus for roads, B minus for solid waste, stormwater, D plus. This is like in this country, as much money that we have in this country, this is terrible. This is terrible. So one of the things that they recommended, they gave a list of recommendations for what needs to be done to fix the infrastructure and to maintain the infrastructure in this country. When people want to give Biden kudos for passing that infrastructure bill, I went over this couple months as well. The amount that they approved in the infrastructure bill, that didn't come anywhere close to near what was recommended by the American Society of Civil Engineers. Why aren't these people brought into Congress? Why aren't these individuals sitting at the table with our congressmen and congresswomen? And why don't they have a say-so in how much should be spent towards infrastructure? I mean, what would they know? They're just civil engineers. Eric, can you put the link to this site in the chat so people can look at this on their own? Because what they do have also, like you can search for your state. Let me go back. I'm scared to look at my state. I really am. You can go find your state. Actually, we just click on it. I'm curious. Massachusetts. What did they give us? Where's our grade? I can't see it. They didn't give us a grade. Oh boy. I don't know why they didn't give us a grade. That was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. But that's how you can check that either way. Anyway, it's obvious here that Iowa needs some work in reference to the infrastructure. But let me make something very clear to you. Democrats right now, they're not thinking about Iowa. They only think about Iowa when they're trying to win. When Iowa was the first primary state, oh, they love to think about Iowa. How are things going for you here in Iowa? How can your life be improved? But Iowa's not the first primary state anymore. So you think they care about this? Where's the president? That building that just collapsed, where's Joe Biden? He won't even go visit people in East Palestine, Ohio. Still, till this day. When we talk about holding representatives and politicians accountable, that in part means not continuing to vote for these people when they're not doing anything. Terrible, terrible mess. I'm going to go to some of the comments here, and then we'll go to the next story. What a hot mess. Dwayne says, Kit talked about it on Hardlands Media. Shout out to Kit. Thank you for the super chat, Aisha. Sabby, you are even more beautiful in person. My husband and I were so happy to meet you in person at the Jimmy Dore show last Sunday. Thank you and RBN for all that you do. What's going on? Hi, Aisha. Yeah, it was so nice to see you guys. I did go to the Jimmy Dore show Sunday. I told you guys I was going there. But it was nice to meet, like, there's so much love from like the viewers out there. I was surprised I saw as many of you as I thought. You know, I didn't think there would be that many people that recognized me. I was like, they probably won't know me. I'll just fly under the radar. But no, that was not true. But thank you guys so much. Just pirate, just like East Palestine, Ohio, they just don't care. Future is one step away from Soylent Green. And Dwayne says, we got money for cops, not infrastructure. Exactly. Like, this is terrible. If you live in an apartment, how do you feel right now? How do you feel? How many of you live in an apartment building that's falling apart and you know it's falling apart and you've complained to the landlords about it? Thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. Iowa, like Ohio, Florida realigned to Republicans, especially for POTUS. Well said. Thank you so much for that, Cool Blue. It's a hot mess. I'll keep following that story to see where things go from there. But like I said, they don't care about poor people, regardless of the party. And speaking of regardless of the party, we're moving on to the next story, which is the debt ceiling. If you have not heard, it appears that Biden and McCarthy have reached a deal, but at what cost to the American people? So brace yourself for this, because I can already tell you, I've looked at what has been agreed upon. I've looked at what has been dismissed. And once again, this is a piece of legislation where the American people lose, because Joe Biden does not have a spine. Despite what mainstream media will tell you about Joe Biden moving to the left, he is not moving to the left. We've told you before that Joe Biden is more like a Republican than he is like a Democrat. And at the end of the day, Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy support big money interest. And that's what it came down to in reference to this debt ceiling as well. Let's go ahead and share this clip and we'll get into it.
Let's dive right into the news. And we begin this morning in Washington, where a deal has finally been made over the debt ceiling.
We've got good news. Just spoke with Speaker McCarthy, and we've reached a bipartisan budget agreement that we're ready to move to the full Congress. It takes the threat of catastrophic default off the table, protects our hard-earned and historic economic recovery, and the agreement also represents a compromise, which means no one got everything they want. But that's the responsibility of governing.
We know at any time when you sit and negotiate within two parties that you got to work with both sides of the aisle. So it's not 100% what everybody wants, but when you look, the country is going to be stronger. This is going to be transformational, where our Congress is literally going to vote to spend less money this year than we spent last year.
Basically, long story short, what that means when they say that no one got everything that they wanted, that means that the American people lose. It's not just about what the Republican Party wants, what the Democratic Party wants. At the end of the day, we did not get what we wanted. This whole idea of the debt ceiling, MMT will tell you it's a myth. Modern monetary theory will tell you it's a myth, right? We see this type of theater happen with the debt ceiling how many times? It doesn't matter if it's Trump who's the president. It doesn't matter if Joe Biden's the president. It doesn't matter if it's Clinton, if it's Obama. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. There always seems to be some type of theater surrounding the debt ceiling, so to speak. But there doesn't seem to be any issue when it comes to spending money to give to Ukraine. There doesn't seem to be all of this theater when it comes to giving billions of dollars to Ukraine. All of a sudden, both parties can get on board for the most part, with the exception of a few individuals. And they have no problem increasing that defense budget and shelling out that money to another country. But as soon as you start to ask them to give money to people in this country, in the United States, all of a sudden, red alarms go off. We got to pause the button. We got to hit the brakes. We can't give the money to the American people. And that is by design.
The House will likely vote on the bill Wednesday, and then the Senate should take it up shortly after. If passed, the United States should be able to avoid default. The agreement, as is, would raise the debt ceiling until 2025, which means the government should be able to pay its bills until after the next election. Under the agreement, domestic programs will see an inflation-adjusted reduction, but those cuts would be mitigated by redirecting funding from the IRS and other areas that House Republicans wanted to claw back.
Pause. I want you to look at this for a second. Number two, 1% cap on non-defense spending increases for the 2025 fiscal year. Notice it says non-defense. Notice there's no cap on defense spending. And this is a common problem that we continue to raise. Whenever they talk about restricting funds, whenever they talk about placing caps and restrictions in reference to how the government is going to spend their money, it is never an issue when it comes to the defense budget. We have a defense budget that's over $800 billion. We're not even at war. And I've watched this budget increase over the years. This is ridiculous. This is the highest it's ever been. And it continues to increase. So there never seems to be a cap on that. Let's go on. Clawback of unspent pandemic funds. Expand work requirements for certain adults on food stamps. This is going to be a big one for a lot of people. You know, what if you are on food stamps because you are disabled? If you have disability and you can't work because you're disabled and you get a disability check, which is not much, contrary to what you may believe. I know people on disability, and you have food stamps. Now people that we know who are disabled, they may have to prove some type of work. They may have to work in some way, shape, or form. This is ridiculous. Again, no cap on the defense budget, though. Rescind some of the new funding to the IRS from the Inflation Reduction Act. There shouldn't have been funding sent to the new funding sent to the IRS in the first damn place. That was just to punish working class people. You think the IRS, the funding that went to the IRS is to punish rich people from having these tax loopholes, from having these offshore accounts? No, that new funding that went to the IRS, that is going to target working class people. It's easier for them to come after one of us. It's not as easy for them to come after someone who has accounts overseas and all these other places. A hot mess. New rules to make it easier to gain permit approval for energy projects. Like, this is just a bunch of red tape. You don't even need all of this. You don't even need, what do you need new rules for? Just approve it. It's a mess.
The deal features new work requirements for some federal aid programs, including food stamps and family welfare benefits. If passed, the bill would rescind billions in unspent COVID relief funds. However, it would keep in place President Biden's student debt relief program as the Supreme Court continues to deliberate over its fate. In light of the agreement, both House Speaker McCarthy and President Biden are claiming the bill gives major wins for their respective parties, with the GOP saying the deal brings down spending, and Democrats are suggesting it protects gains made over the past 2 years.
Major wins for both of their political parties. Notice how they frame it. For their parties. We went over this before, right? The Democratic Party is a corporation. It is not a party. Let's stop calling it. It's not a party. This isn't a club that you join. It is a corporation. So the Beck lawyers argued this in the DNC fraud lawsuit. Attorney Bruce Spiva came forward during the DNC fraud lawsuit and told them, guess what? The DNC, this Democratic Party, this is a private corporation. This is not like, I don't know, the Key Club. This is not like Habitats for Humanity. This is a corporation. So when he says major wins for both their parties, I want you to change that framing in your mind. And I want you to hear major wins for corporations, because that's really what it is.
Meanwhile, the deal to raise the debt ceiling is facing some criticism from both sides of the aisle. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, the head of the House Progressive Caucus, signaled yesterday that some Democrats simply won't support the agreement.
Democrats watching right now at the White House, your friend Hakeem Jeffries, others, do they still have to worry about the Progressive Caucus and whether or not your caucus will support? Yes, they do. Okay, Congresswoman Jayapal, thank you so much.
Yes, they have to worry. Yes.
Yes, they have to worry. Okay.
And on the Republican side, GOP Congressman Chip Roy, a member of the House Freedom Caucus, offered his own colorful criticism of the bill and vowed to try to stop it from passing. Despite the objections from some of these Freedom Caucus members, Speaker McCarthy says the majority of Republicans are on board.
We did a conference call with our conference, and over 95% were overwhelmingly excited about what they see. Members will react to whatever rumor you guys are writing about. Let's let the members actually read the bill before they make a decision to go forward.
Joining us now, co-author of the Washington Post's Early 202 newsletter, Leanne Caldwell, congressional reporter for the New York Times, Luke Broadwater, and chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, Peter Baker. Thanks to all.
Before we get started, look at who they invited on to have this discussion. The New York Times, one of the most biased outlets out there. What are they going to do? The New York Times, they defend the Democratic Party. They're going to defend Joe Biden. Now, they may give a little bit of criticism here and there where they can get a pass and still keep their job. But look at who they invite on to have the discussion.
All of you for being with us. Leanne, let's start with you. Just walk us through the last 48, 72 hours as to how we got here. How did this agreement finally get nailed down between the president and the House Speaker?
So there was obviously these negotiations that were going on for really intense negotiations for more than a week. It was hit or miss for a long time. But then the White House team of Shalonda Young, the OMB director, Steve Ricchetti, who's a top White House advisor, and Louisa Terrell were talking with Patrick McHenry, a Republican from North Carolina, and Garrett Graves, a congressman from Louisiana. And, you know, with the way that this deal finally came together is that they realized how they could find 218 votes. They had to go through every single issue and try to come up with the best possible scenario and combination of policies that they think could pass the House of Representatives. And that's ultimately the key here. Now, what they did not do is they did not go back and forth between their members during these negotiations and back to the negotiating table. They were negotiating based on what they thought their members would be able to support. And now what they have to do is they have to sell this plan, this deal, this legislation to their members. And that is what has been going on, especially on the Republican side for the past 24 hours.
Now, she's from the Washington Post. Think about what she just said. They had to sell this deal. They had to sell it. A lot of what we see happen in reference to Congress, it's just exchanges. It's like they're salespeople. Let me sell you on this. Let me sell you on that. That's all it is. But again, look at the people that they brought on. Washington Post, New York Times, people who control the narrative in reference to the Democratic Party.
So, Luke, let's dive into that a little further, the whip operation here from both parties. Where do things stand? The two sides, at least publicly, yesterday suggested that they feel confident that they'll get the votes needed. But we know that there's some holdouts and some real resistance both sides of the aisle. Tell us where we are, and are they going to get the magic number?
Yeah, I mean, you can see how this deal could fall apart, right? If the House Freedom Caucus has already essentially declared war on the deal, so that's 35 no votes right there. If they could convince more and more Republicans to see things their way and join with them, and Kevin McCarthy loses that majority of the majority that he wants, and then the Progressive Caucus on the left revolts against the deal, that could kill it. That said, as of right now, Kevin McCarthy is shoring up support from the center. You saw that the New Democrats came out in favor of the deal yesterday. That's 100 votes right there for it. And you're seeing a lot of statements from centrists and establishment Republicans in favor of the deal. So it does look right now that Kevin McCarthy does have momentum in getting the votes he needs. Remember, he doesn't need every Republican. He just needs a majority of them, and then they need a majority of the Democrats to stand with it as well. And the Democrats are doing a fair amount of whipping as well, certainly the White House is, and it does seem like they're getting more and more support among Democrats for this compromise.
This gentleman says centrist, left, progressive. Let's just call it what it is. At the end of the day, they're all corporate. They're all corporate. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if Kevin McCarthy is getting votes from people in the center or the Progressive Caucus. Oh, we might hold the line and push back. None of these terms really mean anything anymore. This is what people have to really understand. None of these terms really mean much as they used to, because at the end of the day, they're all a part of corporate parties. Even Bernie Sanders, who is a so-called registered independent, he still caucuses with the Democratic Party. So at the end of the day, you can say Bernie's corporate too. None of these people really hold a line to the point where it's going to threaten their political career. None of these people hold a line to the point where it could mean that they could lose their district, just like the Democratic Party did to Dennis Kucinich, where they redrew his district so he wouldn't have one. None of them. None of them are real fighters. Most of them, for the most part, they're just there to keep a seat, get paid, and they like the perks that come along with the job. They're not real fighters. Even the ones that we put in there to be the fighters, the regressives that we're calling them now, they're not fighters. If they were really fighters, they wouldn't be there. They would get rid of them just like they got rid of Dennis Kucinich and Cynthia McKinney. Now, I want to show you something from the Wall Street Journal because they actually summed this up quite beautifully. What's in the debt ceiling deal? So we're going to hit on a couple of points here. Here are some of the major components of the deal. Let me make sure and click on it there. Oops, I think I did that wrong. Sorry. Sorries. Let's see if I can go back. There we go. Okay. The deal holds, listen to this, non-military spending roughly flat for the 2024 fiscal year from this year. After factoring in some appropriation adjustments, the deal sets a 1% cap on spending increases for the 2025 fiscal year. Again, that's non-military spending. Listen to this. Military spending in fiscal 2024 would be roughly at the level of Biden's fiscal 2024 budget request, a 3% increase to the $886 billion. So they're giving the military industrial complex, they're giving the defense budget more money. It's already over $800 billion. So they can increase the budget when it comes to the military, but they can't increase the budget when it comes to the American people. They're going to take money away from you. They're going to cut food stamps. And for people come to me and say, well, people shouldn't be in that position to where they need food stamps. Bye-bye. You don't know why someone could be in that position where they need food stamps. Not everyone who needs food stamps chooses to live in poverty, chooses to be poor. We need to get this idea of welfare queens out of our heads, which a lot of people still believe in. Not everybody is in that situation. Some people are on food stamps because they're disabled. They're on disability. They cannot work. 100% disability. There's different percentages that you can get with that. This is what people have to understand. Do not come to me with poverty as a state of mind. No, poverty is an experience. That is what you're experiencing at that point in time. If you are born in poverty, it is very hard to get out of it. It is a cycle that continues to repeat. Most people don't get out of it without any type of help. So this is embarrassing that you should see 3% increase to $886 billion military spending, because they always have money for that. Let's go on. I'm going to skip that part because you already heard that. IRS funding, the deal would cut up to $21.4 billion of the IRS funding that they had planned to send to the IRS. I called BS on that from the get-go. The IRS does not need more money. Let's go down. Pandemic aid. The deal claws back about $30 billion in unspent money that Congress passed to battle the pandemic. And, part of this one is a big one. Because, some people have already been removed from Medicaid. Once the emergency status was lifted by President Biden, that actually kicked people off of what little bit of insurance that they had. So now you have more people who are uninsured. By the way, Joe Biden, where is this extension of Obamacare? Where's this healthcare plan that you supposedly had? But people want to complain about pushing for universal healthcare. This is a big one, is the work requirements. The White House agreed to a key GOP demand, tightening work requirements for federal aid, primarily by temporarily raising the age of people who must work in order to receive food aid through SNAP. So increasing the age for people to work. The tentative deal would largely require able-bodied, low-income adults without dependents between the ages of 18 and 54 to work to receive food aid, up from the current top age of 49. Currently under rules resuming in all states by July, these adults can receive benefits for no more than 3 months within a 3-year period, unless they are working or enrolled in a work program. First of all, define able-bodied. What does that mean? Some may say, well, it means people who are not on disability. People who can physically work. What do you mean by that? There are people who are on disability that physically, they look fine. Physically, it looks like there's nothing wrong with them. So they need to break down, what do you mean by able-bodied? The other piece here, let me highlight this. Currently under the rules resuming in all states by July, these adults can receive benefits for no more than 3 months within a 3-year period, unless they are working or enrolled in a work program. What kind of mess is this? I'm sorry. You can't receive any SNAP anymore. The best that we can give you, 3 months within a 3-year period. So you might want to stretch that out, maybe 1 month a year. Otherwise, if you want more, you have to be working or enrolled in a work program. What is this going to do? Again, when we talk about people who are on disability, not everyone on disability physically looks like they are disabled. What about people who don't have 100% disability? What about people who have like 85% disability, 90% disability? Now they got to go out and look for a job. Kristen says, I am type 1 diabetic. My husband has lupus. We still can work, but it's tough on our bodies. Just another example. This is a mess. This is a mess. I feel like this is just another excuse to continue to make the American people just worker bees. Worker bees. Go to work. All the things they want to do to keep you from actually getting to a point where you can enjoy some bit of your life and you're not stressed out and figuring out how you're going to pay for the bills. In an effort to make the change more palatable to Democrats, the deal is also expected to eliminate the work requirements for veterans, homeless people, and young people leaving foster care. Veterans, homeless people, and young people leaving foster care. This is the point I wanted to stress to you. It doesn't say anything about people on disability. Let's go on. Both these new exceptions and the higher age limit would end by October 2030. The deal also makes some under-the-hood adjustments to how states can decide to grant exemptions for individuals to the existing work requirements for food aid. Currently, states can opt to drop the work requirement up to 12% of recipients, which will be lowered to 8% under the agreement. Okay. And who fits that 8%? Like, how do you decide who's going to fall into that category? This is why I don't like when they means test these types of policies. Let's go on. Permitting of energy projects, including Mountain Valley Pipeline. So miss me with the whole Joe Biden is the climate president. And that includes some of you on some of these left podcasters who are making that claim as well. You have Joe Biden out here approving the Willow Project. I told you that he was approving drilling that was happening off the coast of Texas. I told you that last year. You have that. And now you have this. Permitting of energy projects, including the Mountain Valley Pipeline. The bill imposes a 2-year timeline for the most complicated environmental reviews required for large-scale energy and infrastructure projects. Sorry. Had to cough there. Anywho, and gives project developers the right to sue to meet the deadline. The agreement also requires that a single federal agency take charge of the project's environmental review, assuming responsibility for the review's timeline. Right now, multiple agencies often perform their own individual environmental assessments, which extends the review process. Pipelines, guys. Listen to this. The bill also specifically expedites the remaining permits for the Mountain Valley Pipeline, a 303-mile natural gas pipeline in West Virginia and Virginia. This is something that Joe Manchin wanted. How does Joe Manchin always seem to get what he wants out of these deals? Whether it was the infrastructure deal, they bent to Joe Manchin to give him something that he wanted in reference to continuing to destroy the climate so that he can still make money off the coal industry. And now you have this pipeline. After everything that just happened with East Palestine, Ohio, Flint, Michigan, Standing Rock, Line 3, we have Joe Biden, who's supposed to be a Democrat per se, who some people bragged he's been the best president on climate, caving to people like Joe Manchin and to Kevin McCarthy to allow another pipeline to come through. So do not tell me anymore that Joe Biden is the climate nothing. He is continuing to allow this type of behavior to continue. Charlemagne the God, he did ask, who's the president? Joe Manchin, Joe Biden. Feels like Joe Manchin's more in charge than Joe Biden. Again, they all back corporate interest and money at the end of the day. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat, and Shelley Moore Capito, a Republican, have pushed to speed up the completion of the pipeline. So there you go. When they brag about bipartisan legislation, I always know at the end of the rainbow, there was something in it for Joe Manchin. Common Dreams actually has a great article about this, the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Climate group slam debt ceiling deal for MVP approval and other polluter giveaways. This agreement is far from a compromise, said one campaigner. It's a surrender to big oil and Republican hostage takers in Congress. It's not even just like the Republican hostage takers part to me. Like that's not even the big deal. The big deal is the fact that both parties support big oil. Let's go on. In exchange for an increase of the United States government's arbitrary debt limit, the Biden administration betrayed the American people. That's right. By accepting a deal that requires the approval of all remaining permits for the planet heating Mountain Valley Pipeline and weakens the government's ability to stop further pollution causing projects. Environmental protection groups warned that the text of the so-called Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, which, if approved by Congress in the coming days, would hold federal non-military spending at its current level in the coming year and increase it by 1% in 2025, includes a colossal error by the Biden administration. I just want to correct something here. It's not an error. They know exactly what they're doing. So you have to stop making excuses for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. They know exactly what they're doing. Singling out the Mountain Valley pipeline for approval in a vote about our nation's credit limit is an egregious act. That's coming from Peter Anderson, who's the Virginia policy director with Appalachian Voices. By attempting to suspend the rules for a pipeline company that has repeatedly polluted communities, water, and flouted the conditions in its permits, the president and Congress would deny basic legal protections, procedural fairness, and environmental justice to communities along the pipeline's path. The MVP has previously been denied multiple permits by courts due to concerns about its effects on water, air quality, and environmental justice for communities it would run through West Virginia and Southern Virginia. But who lives in those communities? West Virginia is one of the poorest states in the country. A lot of Joe Manchin's constituents are poor, but Joe Manchin's not. Similar thing for Jim Clyburn, by the way. This pipeline, once again, another pipeline that is running through working class, poor communities. And it's already telling you that their water quality will be affected. But they don't care. Because at the end of the day, people don't care. They don't care what happens to poor people. And you can connect this to the story I just told you about Iowa. They just don't care about you. Now, I say that. But what is it going to take for the American people to truly wake up? What's it going to take? Joe Manchin is not going to rescue you, but you guys continue to vote for this clown. Joe Biden is not going to save you. No one is coming to save us. I have to be very clear. And people will sit here and they'll nod, and then the next candidate that comes on with the bells and the whistles, and they fall for it again. At the end of the day, these candidates, they back big money, they back big oil, they back corporations. They do not protect poor people or working class people, period. And they're not affected. '24 is just around the corner, you guys. Just around the corner. I don't know what to tell you. But if you guys, like, honestly want to give Joe Biden a chance again, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. What it's going to take for people to get out in the streets and say, no, we will not participate in this. I don't want to know what it's going to take to tell people that there is no lesser of two evils. Evil is evil. That's like being sort of pregnant. I don't know what it's going to take. But this has been an absolute disaster. Biden administration has been a disaster. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat and then we'll carry on. Jamie says working class people don't have lawyers to fight off the IRS. That's true. Or to fight off anybody. Thank you for the super chat, Yonina. Your infrastructure has no rating for a couple of reasons. One is the ground under your feet. Another is Plum Island. And another one is BlackRock money, more than likely. We've been played for so long. That would make sense. She's talking about reference to Massachusetts. And thank you for this one as well. Also, I don't know if you heard today, but there is a volcano erupting in Antarctica. Hasn't happened since 1889, 30 years after the Carrington events. I did not hear about that. I'll have to check that. And thank you for this super chat as well. The thing that the majority of the world doesn't get about Noah for the flood or Cassandra with Pompeii is that the truth of what they told hurt them too. It would hurt them more if they didn't, though. Fox's Book of Martyrs. Interesting. Robert says this is to force the poor and people without the skills to take any old shitty job at shitty wages. That's right. And thank you for this super chat as well, Yonina. There is no help in this area I live in, no support to lift you out of poverty. The body may be able, but the mind is not also. C4 neck fracture here. I physically look fine, been on disability for 13 years. Yeah, that's what people have to understand. Like, disability doesn't always mean you have a physical, a physical disability that you can see, right? Just because you're not in a wheelchair doesn't mean you're not disabled. And thank you for the super chat, Carl. I know the DNC would rather see Trump or DeSantis win than Marianne Williamson, like Bernie, and they will fight her too. But her economic bill of rights is terrific. That's nice. DNC is not going to let her win, though. And we'll get into that in just a second. And thank you for the super chat, Yonina. Don't forget the poll. Yes, I'll show the poll at the end, but thank you for the reminder because I've done that before in the past. Speaking of Marianne Williamson, we're going to go ahead and get into our next story. So Marianne Williamson had an interview recently with Mehdi Hasan. Yes, I know. God, he's something else. And one of the things that I found interesting in this interview is that he referred to her as a spoiler candidate. I really don't like this term. I don't know who started it. And while I do not support the strategy of running through the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, I don't agree with any of those strategies anymore. I have to say, this framing of calling people spoiler candidates, I heard that when Jill Stein ran for president, right? She's a spoiler. Don't support her. That's a guarantee. You screwed over Hillary. No, I think if people wanted to vote for Hillary, they would have. Jill Stein took votes from Hillary Clinton. Did she? Even if you give Hillary all those votes, she still loses because she didn't win via the Electoral College. That's how it works. It's not about popular vote. Otherwise, Hillary Clinton would have been the president. I don't understand why people can't put these things together. But she's been referred to as a spoiler candidate. Now, shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Case Study's always out there doing the damn thing. Full segmented interview with Mehdi and Marianne Williamson running for the Democratic nomination on her viability policy, being a spoiler candidate, and more. So listen to this.
Before the 2020 Democratic primaries, Marianne Williamson had already made a name for herself as a best-selling author and self-help guru. Her book, A Return to Love, won praise from Oprah Winfrey, saying she had, quote, never been more moved by a book than by this one. Williamson went on to become almost a household name in 2019 when she ran for president in the Democratic primaries and gained attention in particular for this comment she made during the second debate.
If you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days.
She also made a very eloquent case in favor of reparations for slavery, and that night became the most searched candidate on Google. And although Williamson later dropped out of the race, she's remained politically active ever since, becoming popular with younger voters, especially on platforms like TikTok. And now Marianne Williamson's entering the presidential race again, this time against sitting President Joe Biden, painting herself as the more progressive candidate. Williamson recently laid out what she calls an economic bill of rights, which runs to the left of President Biden's economic policies and includes the right to a job that pays a living wage and universal.
Want to pause here for a second if you haven't seen this. And then this is similar to what Bernie had. Right to a job that pays a living wage, right to a voice in the workplace through unions and collective bargaining, universal health care, cost-free higher education. Although I question what cost-free higher education, I question if that's including private universities. I'm assuming that would just be public universities. Clean environment and health planet. I think they mean healthy planet. Who wrote this? I'm sorry. The right to a meaningful endowment of resources at birth, right to sound banking and financial services, right to an equitable and fair justice system, and the right to cultural and civic involvement in democratic life. This piece here, the right to an equitable and fair justice system, you have the right to it. It's just that the justice system doesn't have to hold up their end of the bargain. That's the problem. Just like you have a right to a trial by jury, but most people don't actually have a jury trial because they're usually lawyers who specialize in making plea deals. And a lot of times people will just take the plea bargain so that they don't have to deal with time spent in jail, paying all these fines and hoping and waiting for a trial. This is how people end up with rap sheets that may not even be guilty. They'll just go ahead and take the plea deal because they don't want to sit in jail. So you have a right to some of these things. It's just that the other side of the bargaining table also has a right to make things unfair in a way that is more opportunistic for some than others. I don't know how I feel about the phrasing the right? I think you need to demand it. Like, that's the difference. Like, you have a right to a lot of things, but we don't really demand things in this country. And I think that's a big part of the problem. Let's go on.
Quality healthcare. But given she can't win, why is she running? Marianne Williamson joins me now all the way from London. Marianne Williamson, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know it's late where you are. Let's start with an obvious question. Why are you running against Joe Biden? Why do you believe he does not deserve a second term as a Democratic president?
You said a couple of things tonight that were interesting. You said, well, he has given more investment in green energy in the Inflation Reduction Act than had ever been done. Yeah, but he also approved the Willow Project, which completely nullifies those investments. He's also given more oil drilling permits even than Trump did. So this idea that he's done more investment in green energy, please let's not pretend this is the great climate change president. You also mentioned that he cut child poverty in half. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, he did with the child tax credit. And guess what? 6 months after they did it, it expired and they didn't bother to permanentize it. So there are a lot of ways in which the president has said that he would do things. He's made some incremental changes. I don't want to not give him credit where credit is due, although you did just now. And I think that clearly, if we really want the kind of economic reform that the people of the United States deserve, which certainly was not granted to the American people tonight with this very, very sad negotiation with the debt ceiling, then we're going to have a president who says like it really is and makes the changes that are necessary.
Let's jump in here for a little bit. Notice that she did push back on him in reference to the climate issue, which I'm glad that she did do that because Mehdi Hassan is a snake. Like, I don't trust him. I've been saying this for a while. Some people, for whatever reason, they wanted to give Mehdi more of the benefit of the doubt. And I think when he interviewed Matt Taibbi, he showed his true colors, but I never really trusted Mehdi Hassan. I feel like he just goes where the wind blows. I don't think like I think he's a smug ass. Like, I really do. Okay. I want you to pay close attention to the way that he's interviewing Marianne in this interview. And then I want you to compare it to the way that he interviewed Matt Taibbi. So you have to understand, Mehdi Hassan, MSNBC, they're here to hold water for Joe Biden because he is the selected candidate for the Democratic Party. That's who the DNC has already decided that they're rolling with, and that's their ticket. So notice how much calmer he is with her and more friendly he is with Marianne than he was with Matt Taibbi. And why do you think that is? I want you to hold on to that, and we'll come back to that question at the end. But I'm glad that she pushed back in reference to the climate issues. The other thing that I would add is when people say things like, well, Joe Biden has done some good things. What are the good things? Because I hear people say this talking point often, but they never tell me what the good things are. You can't use climate anymore. You can't use it. Can't use that, right? You can't say the child tax credit. They took that away. So what are the good things? That's what I would have pushed back on.
I've also spent much of tonight criticizing his negotiation with the Republicans. Just to be clear, since you mentioned the debt limit, before we get to everything else, much to discuss with you, what do you make of the debt agreement? What would a President Williamson have done differently?
You know, it's interesting because when you spoke about it, there was sadness in your voice. And then when Robert Rice spoke about it, there was sadness. This was a sad night. First of all, I would never have negotiated with economic terrorists. Kevin McCarthy was not a good faith actor here. The president does not play to win. And this was a perfect example of that. So why he was ever negotiating, there were some legal scholars who said he could invoke the 14th Amendment. Others said even if you don't invoke the 14th Amendment, there were other ways he could have gotten the money. So when you say what would the president have done, President Williamson have done, I would never have negotiated with that man. The Constitution of the United States says that our faith will be good, we will be in good faith, our bills will be paid, and our bills could have been paid. I would not have negotiated with that man.
So I'll give her props for that one. Like, I think that was a good pushback. Well, first of all, I wouldn't have negotiated with them. I'll give her props. I don't know who's been coaching Marianne, but I'll give her props for that answer. I do think it is ridiculous that Joe Biden just caved like that. You know, you see how these stories go together, the debt ceiling story earlier and now this one. I don't understand how he was just able to well, I do understand. But the thing is that he sold out the American people just to get the deal done. That's basically what it was.
So what do you say to those who point out that, yes, you are popular with younger voters and on TikTok, but you can't win a Democratic presidential primary? You're essentially a spoiler candidate. And so by primarying Biden, all you're doing is weakening him in the general and making it easier for a Republican to beat him in 2024 in what will be a very tight election.
First of all, let's go back to the very beginning of this question, because I don't like the framing. Hold on.
With that man.
So what do you say to those who point out that, yes, you are popular with younger voters and on TikTok, but you can't win a Democratic presidential primary? You're essentially a spoiler candidate. And so
let's address that first part. You're popular with young people on TikTok. Okay, so what? I don't really care what that has to do with this conversation, right? Okay. Then he goes on to say, but you can't win a Democratic primary. I want people to pay a close attention to the words that he's using. The vocabulary, as I always say, is important. You can't win a Democratic primary. This is Mehdi Hasan telling the American people, and I don't even care. Don't even talk about the polls yet. Mehdi Hasan on the sneak is letting you know they are not going to let her win. It's already been decided. Simone Sanders already told people the same thing on MSNBC. The Democratic Party is going with Joe Biden. Just like when Nancy Pelosi said the Democratic Party is going against defund the police. We're not moving in that direction, Cori Bush. It has already been decided. You see this? And I don't even want to hear just say, oh, well, it's because of the polls. Don't even want to hear that. The election's next year. Not right now. He's letting you know he knows they're not going to let her win. Now, he can't say it that way because he has to keep his job.
By primarying Biden, all you're doing is weakening him in the general and making it easier for a Republican to beat him in 2024.
That part. By primary challenging Joe Biden, you are weakening him in the general election. I would say that Joe Biden has weakened himself. The only person that really stands in Joe Biden's way, whether he has challenges or not, is Joe Biden. Let's be real here. Joe Biden doesn't want to debate any of the primary challengers. I think that's because he can't get through it. I'm just being honest. I don't think he can get through multiple debates. Joe Biden experiencing cognitive decline right before our eyes. Joe Biden having difficulty in press conferences. Joe Biden going to shake someone's hand who's not the prime minister, who don't look anything like the prime minister of Malaysia. Joe Biden stumbling over words, not really being coherent, knowing where he's at. The only person who really stands in the way of Joe Biden is Joe Biden himself. So for Mehdi Hasan to say you are weakening Joe Biden's chances, no. Joe Biden is weakening his own chances. This is like, let's talk sports here for a second. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What if I said last night, and even though we lost and got our butts kicked, what if I would have said before the beginning of the game, oh God, no, Miami, you are really, by letting this dude play, it's the guy with the braids. I forget his name. We almost got him. We didn't get him. Anyway, I think his name is Jamie. By letting Jamie play, you are weakening the Celtics' chances for the finals. You see how dumb this sounds? This is stupid. It's dumb. They say they want a democracy, but they really want hand-selected people. They don't want a real democracy. They only want a democracy in reference to get you to come out and vote. That's it. That's what they really want. How dare you? You're weakening someone's chances. Joe Biden weakened his own chances. If Joe Biden is not strong enough to beat Donald Trump again, that is not going to be on the primary challengers. That's going to be directly on Joe Biden for the mistakes that he's made during his presidency and the fact that he is experiencing cognitive decline. Listen to what she says.
What will be a very tight election?
Well, there are two things about what you said. First of all, you said I'm a spoiler candidate. I'm not a spoiler candidate. I'm running in a primary. So you can't be a spoiler if you're running in the primary. The second thing you said was this narrative you can't win. Isn't that what people said about Donald Trump?
I got to interrupt that part right there. Isn't that what people said about Donald Trump? Yes. But Donald Trump ran through the Republican Party and they don't have super delegates. Donald Trump also had a lot of money. I don't know if that was the best comparison. It would have been different if like Bernie had won and she said, well, isn't that what people said about Bernie Sanders? That would have been different, right? But I don't think the Trump one is a good comparison when you compare it to the Democratic Party, because like I said, the Republican Party doesn't have super delegates. Democratic Party does. And you can go through the same experience just like Bernie Sanders did. You can win every county in West Virginia and the super delegates will say, no, sorry, we're giving it to Hillary Clinton. That's the problem when you're running the Democratic Party. So I had to interrupt there for just a second.
I will win if people vote for me. I believe that in a democracy, people should have as wide an array of options before them as there are candidates running on agendas.
But you won't. But see, that's not how it works. Because see, let's go back to this point again. Where am I? Whee. Sorry, I have a light in the way of the. Okay, there it is. All right.
If you're running in the primary. The second thing you said was this narrative you can't win. Isn't that what people said about Donald Trump? I will win if people vote for me.
No, you won't. That makes sense, but that's actually not how it works. Because if that were the case, then Bernie Sanders would have won those states where people came out to vote for him, but he did not. You see, this is the problem with the whole primary race here. One would think that is the way that it works, but that's not the way that it works. If that was the way that it worked, then Hillary Clinton would have won the general because she won the popular vote. That's not how it works. You have to win the Electoral College. In the primary race, even the people coming out to vote for Marianne or RFK Jr., etc., does that really matter in the end when the DNC has already decided that you are not going to be sitting in the White House? When the DNC has already decided that Joe Biden is going to be returning to that seat? That's really not how it works. That's the thing. We don't really have a democracy.
I believe that in a democracy, people should have as wide an array of options before them as there are candidates running on agendas. That's what a democracy is. We need to protect our democracy right now. That's obvious to everyone. The way you protect your democracy is by using your democracy. Candidate suppression is a form of voter suppression. So this idea that I'm a spoiler, no, I'm not a spoiler. I'm a candidate in a primary, and it's very important, I believe, that the president debate me, that the president debate any other people who are challenging him. At a time like this, when the fascists are clearly at the door, we should be having a very serious conversation about what it will take to defeat them, and not just accepting what the DNC has to say because a few elites have decided it's going to be Joe Biden.
But you have no choice to accept what the DNC has to say because the DNC fraud lawsuit proved that to be true. This is the problem here. There were a group of people that decided after Bernie 2016, they were not going to sit back and accept what the DNC had to say. Two lawyers, Elizabeth and Jared Beck, decided to challenge that issue. And what they found during the DNC fraud lawsuit is that, guess what? The DNC does not have to be fair to you. They don't have to be fair. Eric or Corey, whichever one in the background, if you can you find that screenshot again, that statement from attorney Bruce Spiva, where he said that the DNC explained that they don't actually have the right to do that. This took place in court, you guys. This took place. We already had this. So when Marianne says, like, you don't have to, just accept what the DNC says, according to the court, yes, you do. That's the thing. Like, more people need to talk about this. I know people don't want to. They're like, oh, we don't need to go back and revisit that. No, you do. You do. This isn't like just my opinion. This is what the court decided. Let's go on.
If you're a viewer of the show, and I don't know if you are or not, I'm very clear about the fascist threat, which is why I worry about a divided opposition to a fascist threat. And just to be clear, you're right, Donald Trump did win against expectations. But to be fair, Donald Trump entered the 2016 race and led in the polls throughout. I think there was one brief moment where Ben Carson overtook him. Otherwise, he led the entire time. You got, correct me if I'm wrong, you never went above more than 1% in the polls in 2020. So I have to ask, what makes you think 4 years later, yes, now is my time?
Well, to that point, Joe Biden wasn't leading in the Democratic primary polls all throughout the primary, but he's the president. That's what I would have mentioned to Mehdi Hasan. What are you talking about, Mehdi? During the 2020 Democratic primary election, Joe Biden was not leading the polls through the entire thing. In fact, there were multiple times that Bernie Sanders was number one. Would Mehdi have told Joe Biden to fall back? No, he didn't.
Okay, first of all, I've been up to 11% this time, right? That's number one. And number two, there is an ameliorative effect in somebody telling the truth. Somebody needs to tell the truth about this country, which the American people know. Please remember, Mehdi, 70% of the American people do not want him to run again. The American people, you have 70% of the American people who live with chronic economic anxiety. You have 64% of Americans who cannot absorb a $400 unexpected expenditure. We have 60% of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. 1 in 4 Americans live medical debt. You have 18 million Americans who cannot even afford to pay for the prescriptions that their doctors give them.
Agree on all of that. So what are you proposing to do that's different?
We're going to pause here for a second. So those are things that are similar to what Bernie Sanders said. Eric, I'm ready whenever you are with that statement from the attorney. These are things that are similar to what Bernie Sanders said, right? Mehdi Hasan says, yeah, I hear you. I agree with all that. Do you? Does he really agree with all that? I don't think he does. I think at the end of the day, Mehdi Hasan and everyone else at MSNBC is going to be pushing Joe Biden just like they are now. Here's that statement from the attorney from the DNC fraud lawsuit. Because, see, some people forgot. You know who didn't forget? Me. DNC attorney Bruce Spiva. Everyone, take this home with you if you have not seen this. There is no such thing as a Democrat. The DNC just encourages people to vote for the Democratic Party. No one has any right to an expectation of a fair election. Let me say this again. No one has any right to an expectation of a fair election. This was decided in court, ladies and gentlemen. There is no democracy. When she says, like, well, I'll win by people voting for me, that just don't matter. They don't have to be fair to you. If the DNC wishes to select a candidate in the primaries instead of a free election process, that is their right. Donating money to Bernie Sanders doesn't mean you thought that money was going to assist him to win the primary. You have no right to think the DNC was obligated to follow their own charter and internal policies about elections. Discussion of and any disputes with the DNC do not belong in a transparent process in a court of law. The DNC is a private association which should never be asked to engage in the discovery process or have to reveal any of its internal workings or strategies should they decide to select a candidate rather than allow a fair election of a candidate. They don't even have to disclose this with you, okay? They don't have to do this at all. Legally, they are protected. So no, they don't. That's not how it works. And I wish people would stop pretending like this is how it works. It's not. Eric, if you want to give people the link to that, I think some people want the link to that in the chat when you get a chance. Let's go back to the video because I'm sorry, we can't just kid ourselves here.
Joe Biden, briefly explain to our viewers, what is your policy platform, briefly?
My policy platform is that the American people should have an opportunity for an economic U-turn, for fundamental economic reform. We should have the same things that every other advanced democracy has. We should have universal health care. We should have free college tuition and tech school. We should have free child care. We should have paid family leave. We should have guaranteed sick pay, and we should have a guaranteed living wage. We should have an economic bill of rights. We have a country where there has been a massive transfer of wealth into the hands of 1% of our people. It has completely destroyed our middle class, and it is now baked into the cake of how our political system operates, that we will continue to make it easier for people who already have to get more and everyone else to struggle to make it. The majority of Americans live with constant economic anxiety in the richest country in the world.
So I agree, Marianne, with your analysis, and I agree with a lot of the policies that you're outlining. The issue is, I guess, you. And you mentioned Donald Trump. I spent a lot of time on this show referring to Donald Trump as the former reality TV star, not just to be snarky, but also to remind people that he had no business running for president. He had zero experience, zero qualifications. And with respect, doesn't the same apply to you? I mean, I may agree with a lot of your policies, but that doesn't mean that you, Marianne Williamson, self-help author, best-selling author, former spiritual advisor to Oprah Winfrey, are qualified to lead the country, to be commander-in-chief, to run the federal government, to have your finger on the nuclear button. Doesn't experience matter?
What are the requirements? That you need to be at least 35 years old, correct? What are the requirements? It's not like the requirements are you have to have time experience in the military, even though you're commander-in-chief. That's not a requirement. You have to have experience as a lawyer. That's not a requirement. What is he talking? What are the requirements other than you have to be 35? So listen to this. This is interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's look at what those experienced people have done for us. Look at all those experienced people who took us into Iraq. Look at all those experienced people who kept us in Afghanistan 20 years too long. Look at all those experienced people who have not raised them.
I agree with you, but also look at
I think she's bringing up a good point here in reference to the wars, but at the same time, then it's like people can push back on Marianne and say, but you still want to give money to Ukraine. Like, instead of like trying to call for some type of peace, like you not really trying to stop and, de-escalate these wars either. Like, this is the other thing, he does not touch on foreign policy here, by the way. Have you guys noticed that? He does not touch on foreign policy. And notice he's still being much nicer to her than he was with Matt Taibbi.
Donald Trump. That's the guy, that's the last person we had, and he had no experience.
Donald Trump's problem as president was not that he had not been in politics.
He brings up Donald Trump. Hold on, I want to play this part one more time. This part's important.
Look at all those experienced people who kept us in Afghanistan 20 years too long. Look at all those experienced people who have not raised them.
I agree with you, but also look at Donald Trump.
Donald Trump didn't send us into Iraq. I'm just confused. She mentioned Iraq and Afghanistan and experienced leaders, but Donald Trump didn't send us into Iraq. And I'm no fan of Donald Trump, but I don't remember new wars starting under Donald Trump. I don't know if that was a good time to bring Trump in there when she's talking about Iraq and Afghanistan. And if I was Marianne, I would have pivoted right back to the foreign policy.
That's the guy, that's the last person we had, and he had no experience.
Donald Trump's problem as president was not that he had not been in politics. It's the nature of his character. If Donald Trump had had a different kind of person who surrounded him, Donald Trump would have been a different kind of president. And, you know, the founders did not say that in order to run for president, you had to have political experience, because they were leaving it to every generation to determine it for itself. What are the qualifications for a leader at this time? My qualifications are that I've been around enough to see how this country operates. I've been around the very rich and the very powerful.
I wouldn't have even gone into all that. I wouldn't have gone into all that. I'm sorry, but they don't ask other people these questions. In reference to, I felt like he tried to do the hook, line, and sinker. He was baiting Marianne when he brought up the qualifications. And if I was her, like I said, I would have pivoted right back to the foreign policy and pivoted right back to these wars. I wouldn't have even gone into, well, this is what I've learned during my lifetime, and here's my qualifications, here's my experiences. No, don't take that bait. I wouldn't have even gone down that road. The requirement is that you're 35, at least 35 years old. Like, this is ridiculous. Give me a break.
I've been around the very disadvantaged, do not have money, do not have power. And I've seen how this country operates. I've seen it up close. And I am in this candidacy saying what everybody knows. This society is rigged at this point.
But everybody says that. Everybody says they've been around poor people. They've been around working class people. My friend who was, on disability, I helped volunteer for some organizations, and I fed poor people, and I've been around. Everybody has that talking point at some point or another when they're running for office. But the thing is, if you haven't been in that situation, you don't know for sure what it's like. If you've never been poor, you really don't know what it's like. You know what you see on the outside, but you don't know the stress and the trauma that comes from being poor. You don't know the stress and the trauma that comes from being working class and not knowing how you're going to pay this bill just so you can continue to put food on the table, just so you continue to pay your rent, how you're going to pay these medical bills. If you don't have that experience, you really do not know. And I'm so tired of candidates making this talking point. I knew some poor folk. That doesn't work anymore. It really does not work. Yes, okay, yes. But after you knew those poor people and you work with those poor people and you helped care for those poor and working class people, you went back home to your neighborhood where the people aren't poor. That's what people have to understand. I feel like she fell for it. I would have not taken that bait.
Society is not even operating as a real democracy. We have already moved into the area of oligarchy, whether it's oil companies or defense contractors, insurance companies, big pharmaceutical companies. They run this country, Mehdi, and you know it. I've heard you say it.
And I said to you, I agree with you on a lot of the policy stuff. But let's talk about you again.
Yeah, he said he agreed. But this guy is he's such a snake.
Yeah, and you mentioned character. Politico in March interviewed 12 of your 2020 campaign staffers who painted a picture, quote, of a boss who can be verbally and emotionally abusive. All 12 former staffers said you screamed at people till they cried. 3 said you threw phones at your staffers. You've denied all those allegations, I know, called them categorically untrue. And yet last weekend, your deputy campaign manager resigned, and then your campaign manager resigned back to back. Why is it, Marianne, that so many of the people who work for you don't seem to like working for you?
Well, how come so many do? Number one. Number two, I've never thrown a phone. Okay. Have I raised my voice? Absolutely. I've never thrown my phone at someone. I raised my voice at times. And I'm sorry, if you were tried in a court of law, there are rules of due process, and the person who is being prosecuted has a chance to bring up their own witnesses, etc. When you're tried in the media, they can say anything. If I, in raising my voice, have offended anyone or made anyone feel bad in any way, then I am sorry. But that doesn't mean that I think that the narrative that was painted in that picture, in that article, was in any way true. And once again, things like through a phone, never.
Okay.
Here's what I would have said in that, example, because she's talked about this before on other interviews. I would have said, it's really interesting because this is what media tries to do. They try to come after these candidates that are, quote unquote, not running in the status quo lane or really a part of the establishment, so to speak, or they want to push for issues that are going to help the American people. They try to write smear articles about them. I would have brought it back into Mehdi Hassan's court and talk about how even the network that he's a part of is dishonest most of the damn time. They back the State Department and they back these talking points, and they go against anyone who is against those talking points. That's how Mehdi Hassan got that job. That's how he gets to keep that seat. And that's what people have to understand. So the thing is, like, if I was Marianne, I would have brought up the fact that, oh, of course, they're trying to smear me. They're going to do those things because I am running against a sitting president. I am challenging Joe Biden. So bring it back to that. They did that to Bernie Sanders. We don't know if I don't know if that stuff that happened with Marianne is true or not. But the thing is that bring it right back to the point and the problem about the mainstream media. And I say this because Bernie Sanders did not do this. Bernie Sanders was heavily attacked and smeared by the media, and to his face, they smeared him on these shows, on The View, on MSNBC, and Bernie tried to be diplomatic and just to stay calm and just answer the questions. But Bernie Sanders should have called out the media, both in 2016 and in 2020, and he wasn't willing to do it.
One final question. We're out of time, but I got to ask, just to be clear, yes or no? Will you support the Democratic presidential candidate in 2024, whoever it is, against the Republican candidate, whoever that is? Yes or no?
You know, Washington, in his farewell address, warned us about political parties because he said people could be more into their facts, supporting their factions than their country.
But you running in a political party, Marianne. Like, this is the part I don't understand. These quotes, stop telling me about these dead people. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just like, this is something I feel like one of my professors would have said, like an undergrad, like George Washington said, President Roosevelt said, so-and-so said. I don't care. Stop telling me about these dead people. Like, seriously, this is a long time ago. Why are you still listening to what they're saying? The thing is this, okay? The question is simple. Are you going to support Joe Biden or the Democrat nominee? That's a yes or no. And I watched her and RFK Jr. kind of dance around this question. Do the tango around this question.
Support my country. I will do everything I can to keep a fascist out of the White House. But I agree with Franklin Roosevelt. We will not have to worry about a fascist takeover in this country as long as democracy delivers on its promises. Democracy is not delivering on its promises. I will do whatever I can to help the American people vote for an agenda by which democracy will deliver on its promises. That's the way to keep the fascists out of the White House.
So when she says keep the fascists out of the White House, does that include Joe Biden? Isn't Joe Biden supporting fascism as well? You see, so let me answer that question for you. If she feels that Joe Biden is also a fascist, and I had this conversation with Dr. Cornel West as well, and I told him I think Joe Biden's also a fascist because he sat up there and lied to the American people, sat up there and virtue signaled to the American people after George Floyd died, and then turned around and said, we're going to give the police more money. Crime Bill Joe, implementing legislation that directly harmed Black communities, particularly Black men. Yeah, I say Joe Biden is also a fascist, Mr. I'm good friends with Strom Thurmond fascist kind of person. But if Marianne does not think that Joe Biden is a fascist, then that means that she will support Joe Biden. Wake up, people. This is what I want you to get. Think about what she just said. If she does not see Joe Biden as a fascist, what it doesn't seem like she does. And if she thinks that fascism only exists on the right, then the answer to that question is that she will be supporting him. Very simple. I don't like the dancing. I don't like the tango around these questions. Just answer the question. Now, in a recent poll, also shout out to Case Study QB for this as well. This is May 17th to May 20th, a CNN poll conducted by SSRS. Look at this. First choice for 2024 Democrat nominee. 60% say Joe Biden, 20% say RFK Jr., 8% say Marianne Williamson, and another 8% say someone else. I really do believe this organization called No Labels is going to try to come in and grab this someone else 8% by trying to get someone like Joe Manchin to run. Based on what I've been reading, I think that might happen. But look at the numbers, people. The fact that Marianne and RFK Jr. together have 28%. And the Democratic Party is telling you there will be no debates. If you still support this strategy, somebody needs to organize some type of collective action to get people out in the streets to push back against the Democratic Party for this. And don't look at me. Honestly, it really should be the campaign teams. Campaign team for RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, they need to be pushing for a debate to happen. People are coming to commentators. People came to me and Kim Iverson and all these other people saying, why don't you guys try to put something together? That should come from the campaign. They should be pushing for that, not us. So the fact the numbers don't add up, people. And the Democratic Party is telling you there will be no debates. Now, people are saying, well, Trump had challengers too. Did Trump have challengers that were polling at 20% and 8%? Not from what I saw. 15% equals debate stage. When we talk about third-party candidates, 15% you on the debate stage. So he polling at 20%. This is crazy. This is fucking crazy. This is why I say you cannot dance around that question. Ask me that question. Sabrina, we can go to the next part 2 of Type V and C, Eric. Sabrina, if you do not win, will you support Joe Biden for president or the other Democrat nominee? No. It's that simple. People would be very mad. Oh, people be mad at me. People say, how dare that Sabrina? Did you hear what she said? The fact that she won't even support the Democrat nominee. Now I just sit in the back and smile and say, that's right. If I wanted to support the Democrat nominee, then I wouldn't be running against them. A hot mess. Very simple. Let's go to some of the comments here. Monarch says, let Marianne and RFK Jr. debate. Their campaign teams should be pushing for that. Should be pushing for that. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button, guys. Thank you so much. That helps me with the algo. Thank you. Let me know how things are looking on Rumble, Eric. I don't know. I'm a little nervous. It's my first time over there live, so I hope it's still up. Hope I didn't mess anything up. Muhammad says, I don't see foreign policy. That was another one. Thank you for the super chat, Janice. Dems and Republicans invented spoiler for fear votes. Exit polls show third-party voters wouldn't vote or vote another third party if their candidate didn't run. I'll write in someone's name. Thank you for the super chat, Paula. You've really educated me on how corrupt and unfair the DNC is. Thank you. Thank you, Paula. I'm trying to reach as many people as possible about this. People need to know this is all a sham. Thank you for the super chat, Lawrence. Ballot access is sharply skewed in almost all the states to give the edge to the two major parties. This is true. Deneen says, how does a corporation get to intervene in our elections? Because they own the parties. This is why we need publicly funded elections. Chris says, Mehdi Hassan, I want to prevent fascism. That's why I want you to step aside and get behind the old man already. Or else my liblord tribe will continue to unname you, smear you, and skew the polls. There you go. Thank you for the super chat, Mary. Sabby, the main requirement for the presidency is, yes, be at least 35 and born a U.S. citizen. There you go. That's it. Thank you for the super chat, Carl. You have to run in a party, whether it be Democrat or Green. Dr. Jill Stein and Marianne have similar beliefs, ethics, and morality. Nah, bruh. I know Dr. Jill Stein, and I've interviewed her multiple times. She's local here with me in Massachusetts. Not on foreign policy, bud. Not on foreign policy and not on the strategy of running through the Democratic Party. That is for sure. All righty. I mean, you can run independent, Carl. Thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. Trump, 94% nationally for 2020 GOP renomination. So there you go. That's what he was asking. I think there were at least two people that tried to primary challenge Donald Trump, if I remember correctly. Thank you so much for that. Okay. Everything looking good on Rockfin, Eric? I hope so. I'm not over there. We're getting to the story I think a lot of you have been waiting for, and that is the story about Roger Waters and RFK Jr. Let's start with Roger Waters. So if you guys have not been aware, Roger Waters is being attacked yet again. He had a concert recently. Of course, he is still touring. And as part of his live performance about the wall, he dresses up in, I gotta be careful what I say on YouTube. He dresses up in a certain type of outfit, attire. This is not new, okay? This is part of the performance. And if anyone has ever watched the movie The Wall, or if you've listened to The Wall and actually paid attention to the lyrics, you will know that part of what The Wall is about is speaking out against fascism. Unfortunately, that is not the way that mainstream media seems to see it. And that is also not the way that police in Germany have seen it. Now, this broke my heart a little bit, having pretty much grown up in Germany. I was kind of taken aback, and I was like, you guys know better. We're going to play this clip from CNN, but I'm going to tell you what I think this is really about. So CNN chimes in here, and they say police in Germany have launched a criminal investigation into Roger Waters, the co-founder of Pink Floyd, after he appeared dressed in a costume resembling a Nazi uniform during 2 concerts in Berlin last week. Boy, I tell you, here we go.
A rock star is under investigation, accused of incitement. Berlin police have confirmed that Roger Waters, the co-founder of the legendary band Pink Floyd, is now being investigated after he wore a costume resembling a Nazi uniform at 2 concerts last week. CNN's Scott McLean is covering the story for us from London. Scott, what are German police saying about his appearances?
Hey, Boris. First off, this requires a lot of context, obviously, on both sides. First off, the costume itself is worn as part of a performance of the 1979 album The Wall, in which the protagonist hallucinates that he is a fascist dictator. Obviously, it looks like a Nazi uniform. It has the red armband and everything, but instead of a swastika, it has 2 crossed hammers, which is imagery that you'll find associated with that album. It is meant to be satire. He's actually been doing it for decades, but this is the very first time that it's attracted a German criminal investigation. But the Berlin police have justified it like this, saying the context of the clothing worn is deemed capable of approving, glorifying, or justifying the violent and arbitrary rule of the Nazi regime.
Let's go back here for just a second. Something he said that I think is important, and I'm going to chime in.
It's attracted a German criminal investigation, but the Berlin police have justified it like this, saying that...
Sorry. Here we go. This part.
Be satire. He's actually been doing it for decades, but this is the very first time that it's attracted a German criminal investigation, but the...
He's been doing this for decades, but this is the first time it's attracted the attention of a German investigation. Why would that be? What has Roger Waters been doing recently over the past couple of months where other people have attacked him for? Right? He's been very vocal against this war with Russia and Ukraine. He's called for peace. He's spoken to the United Nations about this as well. He also has been very critical about the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Those 2 things will get you. Right? So if he's been doing this performance for years, this has never been an issue before, but now all of a sudden, out of the blue, people have a problem with this attire. They have a problem with his performance. You need to look at what else is going on behind the scenes. And I really think, had it not been for Roger Waters pushing back against this war in Russia and Ukraine and calling for peace, had it not been for Roger Waters being very outspoken about his beliefs about the conflict about Israel and Palestine and standing up for the Palestinian people, would they have responded to this performance this time around? I don't think they would have. Let's go on.
Berlin police have justified it like this, saying the context of the clothing worn is deemed capable of approving, glorifying, or justifying the violent and arbitrary rule of the Nazi regime in a manner that violates the dignity of the victims and thereby disrupts public peace. Now, the performance itself has been controversial for a long time, so much so that the city officials in Frankfurt actually tried to force the venue for this coming Sunday's concert to cancel it. It ended up in a German courtroom, and according to The Guardian, the court ruled that though the performance uses symbolism manifestly based on that of National Socialism, it did not glorify or relativize the crimes of the Nazis or identify with Nazi racist ideology.
Duh! Have any of you ever seen the movie The Wall? So we watched The Wall in high school, right? My teacher was a little bit different, but we watched it in high school. Watch the movie. I remember it used to come on VH1 like often, actually, although I haven't seen VH1 in a long time, but they used to show it like on VH1. If you watch The Wall, then you understand that. You listen to the album, you understand that. It's just really interesting to me. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, now all of a sudden people have a problem with this performance when this has been happening for a long time. I think that Roger Waters has become an enemy of the state. There's a movie called Enemy of the State. It starred Will Smith. Now, that character went through some things, but I think Roger Waters has become a real enemy of the state in the sense that he is also on that website, the Ukrainian kill list, along with some others, along with children, I've been told, but he's on that website. There are people trying to ban Roger Waters from performing at certain venues. You know who else was banned from performing at venues that was a musician? The Dixie Chicks. And what did they do? They spoke out against the war in Iraq during a time when it was not favorable to do so. Some people don't remember that, but I do. Dixie Chicks were canceled for almost 10 years because of their opposition to the Iraq war. Roger Waters has this opposition towards Russia and Ukraine. There are some people that don't like the fact that he has been politicizing some of his concerts. So what? It's his show. People pay money to go there. If you don't want to see it, don't buy a ticket and don't go. It's that simple, people. But this is an attempt, in my belief, to try to silence him the same way they silenced the Dixie Chicks. I really do believe he has become an enemy of the state. And he won't be the last one. There will be more that follow. Here they are going after an entertainer.
After that court ruling earlier this month, Waters spoke to a podcast about the performance and said this.
And they said, and so how can he possibly be allowed to do a show if he dresses up as Himmler and yet blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, I can be allowed to do a show because it's theater, darling. The idea that nobody can dress up in a fucking Nazi uniform ever to do anything in a theater or a film is ludicrous. Obviously.
Are they going to come after Hollywood for those as well? Are they going to come after Brad Pitt for dressing up? I mean, you see how far this goes, but that's what I want you guys to understand. This is not really what it's about. It's about his opinions about Israel and Palestine and about his opinions about this war between Russia and Ukraine. That's underneath it all. That's what it's really about. This is just something that they can try to pin him on.
So Waters is a very, very harsh critic of the Israeli government, calling it a tyrannical, racist regime, but he has always consistently denied that he is anti-Semitic. His explanation there, though, hasn't satisfied all of his critics. The Israeli Foreign Ministry has been critical of the performance, and there's going to be protests in Frankfurt from the Jewish community this Sunday, Boris.
So there you go. He mentioned Israel and Palestine. He didn't mention anything about Russia and Ukraine. There is a statement from Roger Waters, and I want to share the statement It says a statement from Roger Waters on the controversy over his Berlin concert. My recent performance in Berlin has attracted bad faith attacks from those who want to smear and silence me because they disagree with my political views and moral principles. The elements of my performance that have been questioned are quite clearly a statement in opposition to fascism, injustice, and bigotry in all its forms. Attempts to portray those elements as something else are disingenuous and politically motivated. The depiction of an unhinged fascist demagogue has been a feature of my show since Pink Floyd's The Wall in 1980, before I was born. I have spent my entire life speaking out against authoritarianism and oppression wherever I see it. When I was a child after the war, the name of Anne Frank was often spoken in our house. She became a permanent reminder of what happens when fascism is left unchecked. My parents fought the Nazis in World War II, with my father paying the ultimate price. Regardless of the consequences of the attacks against me, I will continue to condemn injustice and all those who perpetrate it. Now, he has been critical of the apartheid state. He's not one of those people that's going to sit up there and make excuses for what's happening in Israel. And I'm sorry, but it needs to be said. The fact that you can't even criticize the state of Israel without being smeared is anti-Semitic. It's gotten to the point where it's absolutely ridiculous, you know? But that's what it's come to. That's what's come to. What else? How else would you talk about it? How else would you refer to it? When we get to RFK Jr.'s statement, I'm going to show you why it's so problematic, what's happening in Israel. Now, he also gave a brief statement at his concert in Frankfurt. Check this out.
Tonight, I'm not going to wear the leather coat. And I'll tell you why this is special. And why it's special here tonight, because I've read everything that I could find that explains the point of view of the people who... There were a few people protesting outside earlier this afternoon. I'm happy to say that some of my band went out and mingled, and I'm really happy. One of them sent me pictures of people who were saying, Roger, welcome to Germany. Oh my God, do you know how much that meant to me? After all the bullshit I've been going through for the last few years. Yeah! Yeah! Thank you! It's not, because believe me, it may look like a doddle, but being vilified in the way I have been for something that is completely untrue, blatant lies. And I could sit here for an hour and explain the narrative as it's developed over the years since I went to Palestine and saw what was going on there. Oh, okay, you can listen, we're in the bar, but I don't know if that was people whistling in approval of the fact that I've been to Palestine, or people saying, shut the fuck up. You know, I've no idea. I hope the former. All right, I'll stop talking. Anyway, so why is it important? We're in the Festhalle. I know all about Kristallnacht. I know all about the 8th, 9th, 10th of December 1938. I've known about it all my life. It's part of something that I've always been aware of. I'm that age that we know about these things. So I feel for the people who are concerned about desecrating this place. This, if you like, shrine to the memory of the men who were taken from here and here. I feel for them. So that's why I'm making this small, but I hope significant gesture tonight. So when the second half starts and the banners don't come down, that's why, and I'm not wearing a leather coat. That is why.
Okay, so that was him letting the audience know why he was not in his usual attire for that show because of what happened, right? I don't even think it's so much the German people as it is, you know, the authorities, the police state, more so, the government, right? Obviously, he's in a packed stadium there. So obviously, not too many people were so turned off by it that they decided not to come to the show, especially if they're a big fan of Roger Waters and they know what to expect when going to his shows. Now, RFK Jr. decided to come out in support of Roger Waters, and he tweeted this. And I want you to see what he said here. Roger, you are the global hero Orwell had in mind when he said, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. The high priest of the totalitarian orthodoxies are trying to silence you with censorship, gaslighting, and defamation. Please keep speaking truth to power. Now, this tweet received over 1 million views. It had over 7,000 likes. But there's just one problem. He decided to delete it. Primo Radical was able to get the screenshot and said RFK Jr. deleted this tweet in support of Roger Waters. He did respond again, and I'm going to show you what the new response is. We can get into all that, but I got to say something here. Who tapped Bobby on the shoulder and told him to delete this tweet? Who reached out to him and said, you know, Bobby, I know you like Roger Waters, but you might want to back off on this one. May not look too good for the campaign. May not look too good to have a presidential candidate supporting Roger Waters, considering his views on Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Palestine. Who tapped him on the shoulder? So the tweet was deleted, and you can see that if you scroll down. It says it right here at the bottom. This tweet has been deleted. Why do I have a problem with this? Because this reminds me of a time when Susan Sarandon did something similar, where she made a statement about the NYPD, which I felt was very much right on. She then received pressure, came back and apologized for the tweet. And I still stand by my statement. You can find that video on my channel. It's like a couple of months ago that I think I did this. Yeah, it was a couple of months ago I talked about that story. Might have been last year, actually. But I said there was nothing wrong with what she said. What she said was true. But someone tapped Susan on the shoulder and told her, oh, that's not a good look. You might want to apologize for that. And she did. And so to remind you, Susan Sarandon apologizes for insensitive tweet comparing the NYPD funeral to fascism. But that's exactly what it looked like. If you saw the video footage, that's exactly what it was. So it goes on to show you here. I'll show you what she said. Actress Susan Sarandon apologized for tweeting a photo of thousands of cops gathered in Manhattan for slain NYPD officer Jason Rivera's funeral and comparing them to fascists earlier this week. She said, I deeply regret the meme I recently shared on Twitter that included a photo of Officer Jason Rivera's funeral. I reacted quickly to the picture without connecting it to a police funeral, and I realize now how insensitive and deeply disrespectful it was to make that point at that time. I sincerely apologize to the family of Officers Rivera and Mora for causing additional pain during their time of grieving. In the since deleted tweet, the Thelma and Louise star posted a screenshot of a tweet by writer and podcaster Danny Haifong that included a photo of thousands of police officers lining the streets of Manhattan for Rivera's funeral on January 28th. So this was the picture here. It was Danny, and he said, I'm going to tell my kids this is what fascism looks like. And it was all the police lined up, you know, hashtag boss the police. So it just kind of reminded me of when they say, oh, we have to have like police out there protecting crime. Who was out there protecting and actually fighting crime when all the police officers were lined up for the funeral? Who was out there doing that day? So I did not disagree with her tweet. But someone tapped her on the shoulder and told her to take it down. Apologize. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. apparently saw that people were asking him, why did you delete the tweet? So he issued another response. And this one, not too good, son. Not too good. So RFK Jr. says, in my remarks about Roger Waters, I was referring to his dissent on the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. I have only recently learned about some of his other views, which I do not share. So in other words, this is RFK Jr. letting you know he agrees with Roger Waters in reference to the pandemic and in reference to the war in Ukraine. This piece here where he says, I've only recently learned about his other views, that means he's referring to Israel and Palestine. That's the other views. Then he goes on to say, I support Israel's right to exist within secure borders, and I also support the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people. I don't know what to say, guys. But no. Everything wrong with this. Everything wrong with it. So the moment he got some type of pressure, he backed down. And what's the problem with that? Number one, it takes away from the support of the person that you were trying to support initially anyway, Roger Waters. Number two, as a presidential candidate that says we need a peaceful revolution, that doesn't look too revolutionary. That does not look too revolutionary. The moment you got pushback for supporting Roger Waters, you deleted the tweet and then you tweet another tweet to basically show everybody that you're not really trying to rock with the Palestinian people by that. Notice how it's always the Palestinians second. Look at this again. This is something I've always noticed. I support Israel's right to exist within secure borders, and I also support the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people. It's always the Palestinian people are second. They're never first. And it's not just with him. I've noticed this with multiple people. This is not okay. When he says this isn't even, I told you, when we interviewed the Palestinian Network, they said that they educated me and informed us that a two-state solution is not a viable option for the Palestinian people. Why is that? Because essentially it's like saying separate but equal. Only there is no equal. And we tried separate but equal in the United States, and that did not work out well. Why? Because the minority group is not going to be on the equal playing field when you compare them to the majority. They're not going to have the same amount of resources as the majority. Same thing with Israel and Palestine. Obviously, the Palestinian people are the minority. So if you do some type of two-state solution, which some people refer to as separate but equal, it'll be separate, but it won't be equal. But this isn't even that. Like, this is just flat out. I support Israel's right to exist within secure borders. I support the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people. That is cringe. That is cringe. So I got to say it right now. If you're saying you backed off that quickly, then you're not really serious about any type of revolution. You just like Bernie. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys, because I know a lot of you like RFK Jr., but he doing something similar to what Bernie said, only he revealing it a little bit sooner. You're seeing this now. And so even I cringed. I had to cringe when I saw it. I said, Israel's right to exist. Here we go again. It just, nah, bruh. You're not that different. You're not that different than Hakeem Jeffries, who would agree with this. You're not that different, man. You're not that different than, what's his name, Torres. You're not that different than Hakeem Jeffries, Torres, all these politicians who have that Israel state first mentality. So no. Now, I want to point out here, because this is so great from the progressive Michigander. This is what they go on to say about the two-state solution. Well, hold on. I think he came up here earlier. Oh, that's when people were like, he deleted the tweet. Yeah. Listen to this. The two-state solution isn't a realistic goal given the amount of settlements Israel has set up. The Israeli government doesn't pretend to want a two-state solution. Therefore, like with South Africa, they must give everyone full citizenship rights, including the right to vote. I mean, essentially, you can't support an apartheid state. Like that, there's no way to do this. Now, some of you know, with me, I have hard lines. There are certain things that I do not bend on. When we interviewed Marianne, we asked Marianne the same question. Marianne, do you support BDS? Marianne said no. Marianne said she supported a two-state solution, and we tried to explain to her from the Palestinian network, like why they said that's not a viable option. Now you got RFK Jr. He's just like, what is this? The point that I'm trying to get across, and I think everybody seriously needs to think about this, but whether you believe in two-state solution or not, if he is willing to go along, especially on this particular issue, if he's willing to go along with what the establishment Democrats want, especially on this issue, he's not really ready for no revolution. And I know what some of you are going to say. Sabby, he can't speak out against them because they're going to throw PAC money up against him. They're going to put AIPAC up against him and yada, yada. Yeah, the DNC isn't going to let him win anyway, just like they're not going to let Marianne win. And I think RFK Jr. knows that. He mentioned this in an interview with Russell Brand where he said he knows the superdelegates are going to give it to Joe Biden. So he already knows that. So if you know, go out with the bang. And just keep it real and be like, nah. But what's really sad is just like that quick, he withdrew his support for Roger Waters. That quick. I hope everyone's paying attention to that, man. Hope everyone's paying attention to that. Ay. So that conversation went on for a long time on Twitter, by the way, for a long time. But that's just, I keep trying to tell you guys, nobody trying to come and save us. Oh boy. Let me go to some of the comments. It's just a mess. What's that, Brenda? He lost the left. Man blew it. What's that, David? I disagree, Sabby. A pathetic protest candidacy is worthless. We need someone not as terrible as Biden, Trump, DeSantis to actually try to win. It doesn't matter if they try to win. It's all rigged. I don't know how many times I can say this to you. The DNC has already decided who they want, and that's how it works. I get what you're saying, but I'm just trying to tell you this is not going to work in your favor. It's a hot mess. Thank you for the super chat, Roger Meadows. Let's start asking them, does PAL have a right to exist? Does Palestine have a right to exist? Thank you, Lloyd. There are way too many blue, no matter who are still backing Biden and posting Trump memes all day. Trump derangement is very real. Yep. Thank you, Cool Blue. Ex-Massachusetts Governor William Weld received 2.35% nationally when he primary challenged then U.S. President Donald Trump for the 2020 GOP nomination. I forgot about that guy. I'm sorry. Kill your Gorgers. Roger also led the boycott of Sun City, Africa. Chris says, RFK, I support Roger Waters. DNC, no, you don't. RFK, correction, I don't support Roger Waters. I got to say, guys, thank you. I said that one. Thank you for the super chat. Yabo, Israeli lobby got the whole Dems and Republicans in their pockets. They are powerful. That's why U.S. officials don't have voice to support to criticize Israel. Thank you for the super chat, Anthony. I think RFK can be persuaded on an issue, hopefully. He could be. I mean, I'll tell you, if I interview him, I would try to persuade him on that issue. I will say, when we brought this up to Marianne, I felt like we really were trying to persuade her on that issue. Thank you for the super chat, Mary. For fool me once, I think you mean shame. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you. What's that, Brenda? Well, maybe I'll keep open then. I don't know. I know sometimes people can be moved on the issues. If I interview them, I will ask them about that and just look, bro, let me tell you why this is problematic. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Sabrina, don't forget Biden made Germany bend the knee and getting involved in this proxy war with Ukraine by getting them to send German tanks. So Germany got the call. Hey, we don't like Waters. You know what to do. That's a good point. That's right. Well. We are going into, I'm not even going to be able to get into Ohio tonight. I'm going to have to start Ohio on Thursday because I'm overtime, big overtime. But all I can say, guys, is look, you get surprises every week. Okay? You get surprises here every week. I don't know what people are going to say tomorrow, but that's what I got. I want to make sure I got all the comments. No call in tonight. I'll be on the Hill Rising tomorrow around 11:30ish. And then also, you guys, I did send out the newsletter for the RBN Boston chapter. One of you did reach out and let me know that apparently one of the settings I had was messed up. I fixed the setting, so now anyone should be able to fill out that Google form for those who want to help. So definitely, if you're not already signed up for my newsletter, definitely sign up. That way you can get those types of notifications, and you'll also get notifications when I go live and when I upload clips. But what did you guys think in reference to the poll? Let's go ahead and bring that up, Eric. Boy, this is a doozy. Okay. 769 votes. Do you think RFK Jr. should have deleted his tweet? 6% say yes. Is that RFK's campaign team? Who is it? Who's the 6%? I'm sorry. I'm just being funny now. 67% said no, and 26% said not sure. That is interesting. I don't know, you guys. If you haven't had a chance to hit that like button, please go ahead and do so. And then I'll go ahead and show you one more time with the newsletter. Oh, yeah. All right, I'll go ahead and add this to the Tight VNC. And I'll pick up with ballot initiatives for Ohio. We'll pick up on that Thursday. So I did update this updated form. RBN Boston chapter launched, calling all volunteers. need to volunteers to expand mutual aid efforts. So you guys know that Rock With Us to RBN, we do have the 5 local chapters that we are beginning to start. So I'm the Boston chapter. And then there is a Google form for those of you to complete if you want to volunteer. So I am sorry. It appears it was restricted to only people in my organization. So I fixed that. So you should be able to dive in now. We're launching RBN chapters in an effort to expand our mutual aid efforts. If you'd like to volunteer, complete the form by June 10th. Our first event for the Boston chapter will be a meet and greet mutual aid barbecue. More details to come once you sign up. So if you go to the Google form, you'll see here, RBN Boston chapter volunteers. It just asks for your email. No one will see this information but me, just FYI. Your email, your full name. Why is email on here twice? Okay, whatever. Email, full name. If you want to volunteer for the first event. And then this is the important part. Would you like to host a virtual mutual aid session once a month? If so, which one? So we have, if I can make this bigger, I'm sorry. We have financial literacy, teaching people how to build credit, teaching them about banking fees and money management, etc. Self-care, meditation, yoga, stress relief, higher ed alternatives. I know I'll be doing that one. Trade schools, online options, and community colleges. And just because I'm doing that, you guys can do that too. Mental health counseling. This is the one where you have to be licensed. I'm sorry. Must be licensed in, what's with the typos? Anyway, must be licensed in Massachusetts. That's very important. I can't give a pass on that. Sorry. Not trying to get us in trouble. Housing and tenant rights, grow your own food, Marxist theory, how to start a worker co-op. And if there's something else that you want to do, you can check other and write what that is. If you selected other, what skills would you like to provide? And would you like to volunteer for food and clothing drives? Yes, no, maybe. And that's it. It's a very short form. I try to keep these things short and quick. Students taught me about that. They said the more questions you ask, the less likely we are to fill it out. So that's it. So if we can put that link in the chat, Eric, before I head out for people who want to volunteer as well. But that also went out my newsletter. I'll probably send it out again Friday and probably again earlier next week, and we'll be good to go. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and doing the damn thing. But I am going to head out. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so I'll be off tomorrow. And then I'll be back here on Thursday. So just look forward to clips tomorrow. And that should be good to go for you. So, oh, Eric, are you looking for that link? Oh, sorry. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Deneen. I hope this streamed okay on Rumble, man. I don't know. I get nervous when I start streaming to other platforms because I feel like something weird is going to happen. But hopefully it went okay. What's that, Katarina? RFK's original tweet was so powerful. I was disappointed he buckled to pressure. Yeah. I know, man. All right. Thank you so much, Eric. So that link is in the chat for those of you who want to volunteer. Deadline to sign up is June 10th. And I'll just remind you guys every night going up until then. All right, guys. That's it for me tonight. I'm heading out. Adios. Hope you had a good time. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.